Your alternative talk radio contact, The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another edition of Into the Fray. First, thanks for being here. If you enjoy ITF, please rate and review it in Apple Podcasts. This helps others find it, which turns into more people with encounters for me to interview. If you'd like more content than the free weekly edition, go to intothefrayradio.com and click Become an Insider. It's only $4.99 a month or $54 for an entire year. And if you have an encounter you'd like to share, email me at shannon@intothefrayradio.com. If you've got shorter stories, feel free to call the hotline, 877-317-9111. You can call that anytime, toll free. My first book, Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, co-authored with best-selling author G. Michael Hoff, is available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle editions. Once you're finished, please take a moment to leave a rating and review. For signed and personalized copies, send $19.99 via PayPal, free shipping within the U.S. only, to beyondthefrayllc@gmail.com. Besides Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, we now have Beyond the Fray PARAMALGAMATION up for pre-order on Amazon right now. As hinted in the title, of course, it is paranormal stories. All kinds of them. It is an amalgamation. They are extremely difficult to classify in any one category of the paranormal. What is wonderful about this book, it is some of my favorites from the show, plus many will be included that you will have not heard on the show. And if you have any encounters that you'd like in an upcoming volume of Beyond the Fray, shoot me an email, shannon@intothefrayradio.com, or you can even just open your smartphone, talk into any kind of recording app, and email me that file. Be as detailed as you can in your story, of course. Any questions? Again, just email me, shannon@intothefrayradio.com. And last but not least, Jeff and I have created Beyond the Fray Publishing. So, if you've got a book you'd like us to publish for you, send us an email at info@beyondthefraypublishing.com. For general questions and information on us, visit our website, beyondthefraypublishing.com. Books we consider will need to be in the genres cryptid, paranormal, or true crime, both fiction and nonfiction. Thanks again, and that will do it for now. So, on to the show. Well, yeah, we'll kind of jump right in here. As you know, probably from my show, Bigfoot is kind of my favorite thing. It's biggest and hairiest in my heart as far as the topics that I cover, even though I've never seen one. So, but your situation is quite unique because you've actually had a few encounters yourself and then created a fictional tale, right? It kind of inspired you to do so. But part of that is because you do look into the area known as the Hockomock Swamp out there in Mass. So is that where you are, you're kind of stationed out of? Is out there?
I live on Cape Cod, but the Hockomock is only about 45 minutes to an hour away from me. And that's kind of what infatuated me, was all the strange creatures and tales that come out of that place. Even the Pukwudigies that come out of it. So, I'm pretty fascinated with that. And actually, I plan to go there in about a month and do an expedition through there.
I've been out in that area before. I had a really hard time finding, unless we were in it and didn't know it, but actually feeling like I knew for sure we were in the Hockomock. We were in Freetown Fall River State Forest. You know, I found that sign. Everybody can find that sign. But I don't know that I ever was in the Hockomock for sure, because it seems very difficult to locate.
Well, you're in the area that Lauren Coleman dubbed as the Bridgewater Triangle,
Right.
which, you know, I don't know if you're in the Hockomock, but you're definitely in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. We're trying to find the actual, like, to where I could go, yes, we are in the Hockomock Swamp, but I never got any confirmation. But that's okay. It was still cool to be there. I found a couple of the very interesting stone fireplaces. You know, the last thing standing out of some of the older structures that used to be there.
Yeah.
With the one white stone stuck in them. I mean, as far as the Hockomock goes, what's some of your favorite stories that have come out of that area that fascinate you so much about it?
Well, the first story I really ever heard was picked up, I think, by either the Boston Globe or the Herald, and it was about a trapper, and this was back in the 80s. He was doing his trapping line, and he just got this weird, eerie feeling that he was being watched, and he turned around and he saw a Sasquatch standing up on a ridge watching him. And that was actually when I really got involved in looking at the Hockomock.
And so as far as the Pukwudigies go, would you ever want to see one of those little guys?
Yeah, actually, I would, to be honest with you. There was another good story that came out about one of those where some guy was just walking down his road with his dog, and he saw it standing there under a street light, and he was like right on the edge of the Hockomock Swamp. And he said it was scary, though, this creature. And his dog ended up taking off on him, and he had to take off after the dog, so, which has happened to me, too. I had a dog, and I was actually up in Maine, and my dog saw the creature first, and he just came flying by me and took off, and I saw the creature, and then I, kind of panicked and went after my dog.
Yeah, I bet. It doesn't always end up very good for the dogs, as we've heard in some of these encounters, right?
Yeah. I would definitely keep my dogs away from them.
Yeah, some of the stories of the smaller entities, beings, people, whatever you want to call them, are very interesting. And some of them are very brazen in that they will just come right up to some people while they're sleeping, while they're camping or something, and not really come up and give a high five or anything, but almost like some of them don't really quite care if you see them.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, I don't know about the Pukwudgie thing. I don't know. I think that would really freak me out pretty bad to see something like that in the woods. That would really blow my mind. I can accept a Bigfoot easier. I know that would also blow my mind big time. I would love to see one, but I don't know about those little guys.
They're pretty scary. And actually, I used one in my book, and I dubbed him as a very scary creature.
Now, does he have clothing, or is he nude? Because sometimes you do hear that they are sans clothes.
Yeah, I've heard that they kind of look like Native Americans dressed in garb and stuff, but and sometimes even carry like bows and arrows. But
Right.
No, this one was naked, but he was shooting fire out of his fingertips because I've heard stories about that. They can produce fire and electricity, and that kind of fascinated me too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, considering all of the different qualities that some of these things seem to have. I mean, a Pukwudgie in and of itself seems pretty paranormal, right? But then you add things like electricity and the ability to shoot things out of their fingers. It's like, well, that adds another layer of nope. So if people want to check out this book that we're speaking of, it's called Strange Days in the Hockomock Swamp, and that is, of course, available on Amazon right now, right? And is that just on Amazon at the moment, or is that any bookseller?
No, it's just on Amazon at the moment. And I'm actually looking at Barnes & Noble to see if they might pick it up in the near future.
It's crazy because, just now getting into the book thing heavily, obviously, just to realize how few brick and mortar bookstores there are anymore is pretty sad.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like gone with the video rental.
Yeah.
It's kind
I still
so
have my
everything's on.
Blockbuster card. I have it on my wall because I'm very proud of it. It's very.
I was going to say, I haven't seen a Blockbuster in ages, but
Yeah,
it's gone.
I think I think there was one left in the country, but I forget there was a news story out. I can't remember if it said that it was still hanging in there or if it had
Wow.
finally closed down. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cryptid now, just like Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so are you then looking to do big time heavy research in the Hockomock, like with a team, or is this more something that it's just for your own personal kind of going fishing in the Hockomock?
Well, seeing, like I said, it's close to my house. It's a good spot to go up and not only go look for Sasquatch, but, some of the other cryptids that come out of there. There's been stories of devil hounds and giant snakes, and there's ghosts and UFOs and orbs. I've seen orbs, actually, too, up in Vermont during one of my Sasquatch encounters. So, yeah, that kind of fascinates me. And I have two sons that live up in Maine, so I go up there a lot, and I just was astounded with how many stories come out of Maine now. But, seeing I'm so close to the Hockomock, and I just came out with the book, I think I'm going to do this expedition with 4 buddies of mine in April, and we'll see what happens.
That's pretty cool that you had the orb sighting while you were out for Bigfoot. I had the exact same thing happen to me. So what do you make of that, Kevin, as far as the orbs go?
They've been said that I don't know, I've heard stories that they're Bigfoots that turn into orbs and vice versa. And my feeling is there's something to do with aliens, UFOs, and that they're just like drones that they send out, and maybe they're following the Bigfoots, but I don't know, there's a couple different theories on it, but the ones I saw were about the size of soccer balls, and there were 2 of them. And it was actually it was that night after I had an encounter up in Vermont where I actually saw a Sasquatch on a snowmobile trail. And at first I thought they were just headlights coming out of the woods, like ATVs or something. And then they separated, and to make a long story short, they started scanning this field. And my dog just kept going nuts, barking at these things. And then I noticed my dog wasn't really barking at them. He was looking somewhere else. And there was this, I thought it was a bush at the time in the field. And all of a sudden this bush stood up and just started walking off into the woods. And the orbs took off after it. And, that astounded me. I just was floored when I saw that. And everything disappeared, so.
Now, at that point, did you have a preconceived notion, as far as maybe you were in the staunch flesh and blood camp, and then that kind of changed your mind about things?
Yeah, because as far as Bigfoot and Sasquatch was concerned, growing up, it was something that I believed in, but I always thought it was out in the West Coast and the South. I never thought I'd see something like that up in Maine and in Vermont, but it's pretty fascinating.
Okay, guys, well, we're definitely going to dig into his Sasquatch encounters here. And again, the book is Strange Days in the Hockomock Swamp, and this is Kevin Foster I've got on with me right now. So, Kevin, I don't know which of the areas that you want to start with, but, guys, it's pretty cool because he's had an experience in Vermont, Maine, and the good old skunk ape in the Everglades. I'm excited about that one. So wherever you want to start with these Sasquatch encounters.
Well, I guess we could start off where my first encounter happened, I don't know, over 20 years ago. I've got 2 boys that live up in Maine, and about 20 years ago, we used to do a lot of camping. They'd come down to the Cape during the summertime, and it was like the end of August. I was bringing them back, and we were actually staying at a place called Hockomock State Park up in Maine, which is on the coast. And my boys were all wound up, so I decided we'd take them on a nice long hike. And we went probably 3 miles, along the coast, and the trail all of a sudden just went up this hill into the woods. So they were kind of tired. They were dragging behind me, and I ended up walking up to the top of the hill, and I looked over the hill, and down the bottom of the hill, I saw this black thing, and it was probably, I'd say, about a football field away from me. And it was just this black thing hunched over, and I'm like, oh, it must be a bear. I better go back and get the kids and turn around and get out of here. And before I could turn around, this thing just stood up, straight up in the air, and it had like a small red thing in its hand, and just turned around and walked into the woods. But I never saw the face, but it was this very large, like 8-foot creature walking on 2 feet. It was very muddy looking and hairy, and it just took off into the woods, and I was just like stunned. I mean, I was frozen. I'm like, what the hell was that? Because I didn't think there were Bigfoots up there at the time. And I kind of like just turned around and went back and got my kids and said, I'm tired, let's go back. And the whole time I was walking back, I'm like, no, that couldn't have been a Bigfoot. But, you know, it definitely was.
So you didn't tell them what you saw because you probably didn't want to freak them out, right?
Nope, I didn't say anything. I just said, I'm tired, let's go back, you know, and they're like, okay. They were tired too, and I had a dog with me, and I didn't want the dog taken off after it, and but, you know, it just, something was off. I'm like, this is weird, very weird. And actually the next day, we decided to go hike another trail to the other side of the park. And we went out in this field, and I found these large feces filled with blueberries and rodents. And right away I said, those aren't bear poops. And I just took my kids, and I said, no, let's not go this way. Let's head back to the coast. And that's what we did. And that was my first encounter up in Maine. And I actually dropped my boys off, and I went to my brother's house in Vermont, and that's when I had the second encounter. And this all happened like within a week. And again, I was walking this trail with my dog, a snowmobile trail, and it was probably, I don't know, not even 200 yards away from my brother's house. And all of a sudden, my dog froze. The hair on the back of his neck went up, and he starts growling. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? And I look up, and all of a sudden, this big spruce tree starts shaking. And out of it comes these deep guttural growls. And I look closer, and I could see this big hairy arm off to the left of the tree, holding the tree and just shaking the tree. By that point, my dog freaked out, and he just came bolting by me, and there was a cornfield off to the right, and he took off into the cornfield, and I just turned around and took off after him. I literally, you know, I've never been scared going in the woods, but this really scared me. I mean, when I saw that hairy arm shaking the tree and the growls, and, you know, at first I thought it was a bear, and I'm like, no, that's an arm. That's not a bear. And again, I said, my God, I just had this other encounter a week ago. What's going on? I'm like, 2 encounters in 1 week? And so anyway, I was very wound up that night. I really couldn't sleep. And like I said before, that's when the orb encounter happened. And I actually packed up the next day and I left. I mean, I was up there to paint my brother's house. He had just built this house, and I was the painter in the family, and I was going to paint the rooms, and I didn't. And he's like, I talked to him about a week later. He's like, why didn't you paint the house? And I'm like, I didn't tell him what happened. I just said I ended up getting sick, and I had to go home. I'm sorry. But yeah, it scared me. It really scared me.
So you were up there to do the work. So you were by yourself. It was just you and your dog?
Yep, just me and my dog. Yep. Yeah.
How rural is that house where your brother was going to be moving into?
Like I said, it's up in Vermont. It's just past the White River Junction, which I found out is a big area that people are spotting Bigfoots. And it was Yeah, it was way out in the woods, farmland, not far from White River there. It's on the Vermont, New Hampshire border, and you could actually look out from my brother's house and see the White Mountains. It was gorgeous, but I ended up never going back there, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you ever tell your brother why?
I ended up telling him just after I came out with the book, because I used the incident in the book. So I ended up telling him, and I actually asked him, I said, have you ever heard or seen anything weird when you were up there? He ended up selling the house about 5 years ago, but he told me that once in a while they'd hear these weird howls coming from the woods, but he never saw anything.
You're like, I know exactly what was making those noises.
Yeah.
Now, what about that arm? So you just saw like the elbow and maybe part of the tricep or something, so you didn't actually see its hand?
I saw from like the shoulder down to like where the wrist area was. I couldn't see the hand, but I saw the arm, and it was savagely shaking this tree. I mean, violently shaking it. It was mad, really mad.
And how big? I mean, it's tough. It's an arm, but if you could.
Well, it was the arm itself, the shoulder. I don't know. The shoulder looked like it was about 6 feet up in the air. So again, this was probably like an 8-foot creature.
That's slightly humbling.
Yeah, and it was definitely hiding behind the tree, but I kept thinking it was going to come out after us, and as I was running away, I kept looking over my shoulder because I thought for sure it was going to come after me, but it didn't.
And you said that was only around 200 yards from your brother's house?
Yeah. Wow. It was like right at the beginning of this snowmobile trail that crossed the road. And actually, again, I was going up this embankment too, and it was at the top of this embankment that this occurred. So,
what color was the hair on this one?
It was black. It was jet black.
Another black one.
Yeah.
Maybe that has something to do with the time of year. Do you think that their coats change, in color tone as different seasons move through?
No, actually, I never thought of that before. You hear about white ones, and who knows, maybe their hair does turn color. But, normally I hear reports of cinnamon, and brown ones up there, but occasionally you hear about black ones. But, yeah, the two that I saw definitely were black-colored.
Now, in either of those, and obviously the one that you just mentioned, it really freaked you out. Of course, you had the whole orb thing going on. You're like, I'm out of here, I'm done. I mean, did you still feel at this point pretty lucky, or are you going, this is a week apart, what is going on?
Yeah, I was saying I was lucky, to get out of there, to tell the tale, but I was scratching my head. I'm like, 2 encounters in 1 week. What is going on? Why all of a sudden is this happening to me?
Are you doing like the Bigfoot version of CE5 or something? You're like calling them to you somehow. You got to teach me that trick, Kevin.
Yeah, I was like a magnet that week. It was just weird, very weird.
See, but when you really boil it down, in the first one you've got your kids with you. That's not ideal. You just want the kids to be safe, and you did the right thing. Right. You're like, time to go. And then the second one, you're completely by yourself, pretty much in the middle of nowhere, just you and your dog. So again, not ideal, right? No,
definitely. You hear the 411 now, and David Politi says, just don't go in the woods alone. And I'm like, now it's like I'm not going in the woods alone. It's like I'm going to have somebody with me, a group of people, because it's just. I really think that has something to do with the 411 too, as people are getting snatched by these things. And I think the government knows about.
So what percentage? I mean, if you could guess, it's hard to say, but as far as the number of people that that David has covered in his books, just roundabout. I mean, do you think it's a high percentage that are being taken by Bigfoot?
30%, and I think UFOs might have something to do with the other percentage. And, of course, you have people that, just encounter the wrong people in the woods, but, things like that. But, yeah, I think Sasquatch has something to do with it.
So when you guys are going to be going out in the Hockomock, obviously you're with a number of people, which is good. But are you going, and actually, like, camping out there overnight? or are you just kind of going out during the day and doing some night ops and then leaving?
Well, there's actually a campground near there, which I'm thinking of staying at, and then doing like late afternoon, early daylight expeditions in there and see what happens. And I don't know if we can get a permit or something to go camping in there. I'm just starting to look into that too.
Oh, you have to have a permit.
I don't know if you need one, but put it this way, when you go up 495 now, you used to be able to just pull over and walk into the Hockomock Swamp. And now there's all these huge fencing along there and signs that say no trespassing, and the government definitely knows something's going on.
Do you think there'll come a day when they'll just shut the whole area down and not let anybody in there?
No, I don't think that'll happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to.
Have you ever talked to any, park people or rangers or anything about the area?
The only park people I've really talked to were up in Maine at Copscook, and they did tell me that they had people and park rangers seeing things at the state park up there, so that kind of verified what I saw. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there are any park rangers or anything in the Hockomock.
Yeah, sometimes you'll go in there, and I remember there being two different vehicles that were just pulled off in random places, and there was nobody around these cars whatsoever. And you're kind of going, and it was, not a nice area to be hiking through. Lots of thick brush and stuff, and it's just got a weird vibe, even during the day.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there before, actually, on the edge of the Hockomock Swamp, and when I was there, I just got this weird vibe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember it was when we were actually trying to find the actual Hockomock Swamp. We were outside of Freetown, Fall River, where the sign is, and I think there was a dog racing track not too far down there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely an interesting area because there was, it's kind of some industrial areas, and there was this dog track and parking lots and things like that. And then all of a sudden you drive down these roads and it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. Like you forget where you are very quickly, that there's any civilization.
It doesn't, right. I was just going to say that it doesn't take long to walk away from civilization and just be lost in this vast, well, the Hockomock is actually 5,000 acres of swampland.
Yeah, it's just so random in the middle of Mass, and what a beautiful state it is. And then there's, like you said, there's just massive swamp with all of these crazy tails out of it. I mean, the large snakes too. I'm pretty sure they can get pretty big, but what are some of the tails of these massive snakes coming out of there? What's the biggest one that you've heard about?
Well, when I was reading accounts that dated back to the early settlers, they were saying that the snakes were as wide as stovepipes, which back then stovepipes were pretty big. Mm-hmm. So, that's 3 to 4 feet wide. They're talking about 25-foot long snakes. And actually, one of the incidents in my book deals with one of these large black snakes. And also reports of thunderbirds come out of there, pterodactyls. There's been stories like that too.
I think I'd be good on the snakes. I don't know that I want to see one of those, because then you certainly would never not look down where you stepped if you saw something like that, or stop moving, for goodness sake. But I think that the Thunderbird is so amazing and so cool. I would absolutely want to see one of those. I don't care where I was. I would want to see one.
Yeah. I would be up for that myself.
Oh, can you imagine camping and you see something that big slithering by? There's just enough moonlight to have the shadow outside, just like in a horror movie. Oh, forget it.
I hate snakes to begin with.
Oh, do you? Yeah, no. I'm one of the people that go no spiders whatsoever. I'm a spider phobe. Snakes wouldn't really bother me, but that big, yeah, that's not cool. Not cool at all. That needs to be wrestling a massive an alligator from Lake Placid or something. That's just far too large. Well, I know that you've got one more from the Everglades. I'm very excited to hear about this one. The old skunk apes down there.
I get it. I got to admit, it wasn't actually a sighting or an encounter. What I found was a massive footprint, and I was actually in Shark Valley in the Everglades, and actually it was funny because I had just stayed at Dave Shealy's skunk ape headquarters down the street. Yeah, I spent a couple days there, and I had been going through the swamps looking for skunk apes and everything, and I didn't see anything. I didn't even see snakes. I mean, so anyway, I ended up mountain biking down this 11-mile trail that goes along a canal, and it's, littered with alligators when you go down there. They're all over the place. And I come up and I see this brown spot in the middle of the bike path. This was a paved trail that goes up. And so I get off the bike and I start walking over because it just looked odd with this big footprint. And at first I'm like, oh, really? Either the park or somebody had painted a big footprint as a hoax on there?
Right.
I walked over and I looked down and it was muddy and it was wet. So whatever had come up out of the canal was heading out into the grasslands on the left. So right away I got a bike helmet on. I start to unsnap the bike helmet because I want to put it down next to it and go back and grab my camera and get a picture of it. Well, right behind me, this alligator starts going into a death roll in the water, which is attracting more alligators, and they start heading over there. So I didn't want to be around. I jumped on the bike and took off, and I pedaled the rest of the way to this big observation tower. And I, on the way said, oh, no big deal. I'll come back and get the picture of it. Well, when I got out to the observation tower, they got hit with one of those afternoon rainstorms, and I knew the footprint was washed away. So I wasn't able to get a picture of this footprint, but it was at least 16 inches. And the weird thing was, like I said, I had been at the skunk ape headquarters. I had seen the casts and everything, and the casts that Dave Shealy have are either 3-toed or 4-toed. And this footprint had 5 toes. So that was kind of weird. I'd actually like to go back down to the Everglades and do some more research down there and scouting around.
So, Kevin, what do you think, if you're talking to, because you've had sightings, you know that they're out there. So if you're talking to a skeptic, what do you tell them that our best evidence is that Bigfoot is out there?
I would say that, well, number one, I believe, everyone says we need a body. And I think there have been bodies. They've just been taken away. I think the government, the National Park Service, the Park Service doesn't even have information for David Paulides with missing people. I think there's a big cover-up going on, but for the skeptic, I would just say, look at the evidence. I mean, there's just too many encounters happening for hundreds and hundreds of years all over the world. There's different variations of this creature, and you can't just dismiss that. Even though nobody's, quote, turned up with a body yet, I just don't believe that, number one. I'm just going to say they're out there. And if you go out in the woods, just be careful where you go and don't go out there alone.
Now, obviously, in your first sighting, it was pretty much a full-body sighting, and it was at quite a distance, but it was close enough to verify that that was not a bear, right? So you knew that was a Bigfoot. If you saw one again, do you know what your kind of ideal, or maybe perfect is too strong a word, but what would your ideal sighting be?
I wouldn't really want to be up close and personal, not too close, but close enough that I could zoom in with, I'm a videographer by trade, close enough that I could get it on footage, and really get some good evidence. I've been up in Maine too, and I don't know, you've probably heard the stories that they build like rock boulder formations. Mm-hmm. And I was up on one of the mountains up in Bar Harbor area, and first of all, we had found a tree that had been twisted like 12 feet up, and it was close to the edge of this mountaintop. And I went over to the mountaintop, and I was just like doing a panoramic view across to this other mountaintop. And you can't really see in the viewfinder at the time, but when I brought it back, I found 3 large rock formations on the other ridge, and these were huge rocks that were like at least 4 feet wide, stacked about 6 feet up in the air, one on top of each other. And there's no way a human being could have done that on the top of a mountain, or even a group of human beings. These rocks were too big. And like I said, there were 3 formations of these. And, I've heard the stories that that's what they do. They build these rock mountaintop things. And, again, I just say they're out there.
So you mentioned being a videographer. Do you think that a decent enough video would be enough to prove it to science?
Yeah, and I think there have been videos that, to me, the ones that I've seen, definitely say they're there. The Patty film was the first one. I saw that as a kid in the movie theater, called The Creature. But there's other ones that I've seen that look totally different from this, because, there's supposedly like 5 different species out there. And I just remember seeing one thing on what they call NVTV, this hunchback creature that came out and was supposedly chasing these 2 kids. And that is one of the scariest videos I've ever seen. And it looked very real to me.
And what was the title of that one?
Well, it was on what they call NVTV. And I can't remember what the title of the creature was, but it was the only hunchback Bigfoot I've ever seen on videotape.
But they were claiming that this was real footage?
Yep. They said it was real footage or one of the biggest hoaxes, best hoaxes that anyone's ever pulled off.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Surely I've seen it somewhere before. What about some other videos, Kevin, that you think stand out? You mentioned Patty already, and then this one from NVTV, but what about some other ones that stand out in your mind?
There was one on there with the white Bigfoot, where somebody's walking through at night, and you catch a glimpse of it, I don't know, for maybe 5 seconds. It turns and looks at the person, and he's like putting a spotlight on it at the time, and then it just turns and runs away. That was pretty realistic looking to me, too.
Yeah, is that the one where you get a really pretty frightening look at his face? Very dark eyes?
Yes. Yep, exactly.
See, that would freak me out to see that in the woods. I'd be like, time to pack up. I'm never camping again. I don't know. That would be bad. Some of these guys are pretty big.
Yeah. Well, that looked pretty big to me, too.
And sorry, I interrupted you. You were going to say something else.
Well, I was going to say that they say that there's no proof. And to me, some of these videotapes of these creatures are pretty realistic looking. And there's been hair samples that have been analyzed coming back as hybrids between, humans and creatures unknown. So I have different theories on that, too.
What are your theories on that, about why it would come back hybrid?
Well, I think there are probably tribes of these creatures that are leftover Gigantopithecus, and then you hear the stories of, back from the times when settlers were here and women were getting kidnapped and Indian women were getting kidnapped. And I think that there's a cross now between humans and maybe what originally was out there.
So that then ties in with what you were saying about some of the missing people. So maybe they're taking some of the women and not just eating them and being done with them. Yeah.
Yep, I think that has been happening for quite some time, and that's why you get reports of, either you hear, well, they definitely look like an ape to me, or a gorilla, or you hear, no, this kind of looked like something like a Neanderthal, and I think it's just because, there's other tribes out there now, different tribes of these creatures.
As far as the kids go, that go missing, which there's, nothing more horrible for a parent than your child to go missing. I mean, what do you think they're doing with the kids? Do you think there's a fascination there? And do they actually have them live with them for a time? Or do you think it's strictly opportunistic food for them?
I think kind of both. I think some of the tribes definitely feed on these people and infants, and actually that's a big part of the storyline of my book. This girl gets grabbed by one, and there's another one that is pursuing them because he wants her for food. But I think, I definitely think people are disappearing and they're being eaten. And then I also, hear stories about people returning that have been kidnapped by him. So, just kind of like let go and release. There was one story about a kid, I think it was like in the 1800s, and the kid came back, didn't disappear for days, and the child said that she had been living with a bear man, and that the bear man had just let her go. I don't think it was a bear, so it just had her and let her go.
Yeah, and the recent one as well, the young man that said that. Was he 2?
Yeah.
The 2-year-old, yeah. Said the bear took care of him.
Yeah.
So, what's up for you guys and your team out there?
Well, my team, the goal is to find one, to see one, and try to get some documentation, good documentation on it. As far as another book, I already have a second book in the works, which is going to be called Darker Days in the Hockomock Swamp. And once again, there'll be Sasquatches in it, but I'm also introducing the Dog Man as like a sequel to the first book. But my goal in the Hockomock is, like I said, to get some real good footage of these creatures. Whether it's a Sasquatch or a Thunderbird or a Pukwudgie, I just like to get some footage.
Do you think it's a situation where you guys would have to go out there enough to where, we're assuming these are very intelligent creatures. I think most of us realize that they are. That you would go out there enough to where they could get more used to you guys, if there is such a thing? Or are you just kind of trying to go out there and kind of catch the lightning in the bottle?
Exactly. I'm just kind of hoping to be in the right place at the right time and get it. Just get it on film.
Do you think that getting a Bigfoot on film or something as strange as a Pukwudgie would, which one do you think would be more groundbreaking?
Well, I think getting Bigfoot on film would be more groundbreaking, just because, like I said, everyone keeps saying there needs to be a body, there needs to be proof that way, but I still think if you get the right footage, to me that's good enough. Yeah,
I think poor Patterson Gimlin, though, they thought they had the gold standard, which they do, but that still wasn't enough. So it's kind of tough out there with the whole video thing,
Yeah. Well, I honestly don't want to see a dead one, but I don't think we need to kill them to prove it. I don't think they're the Harry and the Henderson type of creature either. I think some of these are pretty savage, and they've done damage to people.
So you mentioned Dogman. What are your thoughts on those guys?
The Dogman, it's really hard to say. It's a wolf that walks around on 2 legs. And I mean, it's like the werewolf stories that went back hundreds of years ago. Maybe it's just a werewolf.
So like the classic kind of werewolf that the human changes into it?
No, I don't think, I'm really not sure about the shape-shifting type of thing, but no, I think it's just a creature within itself that is like a werewolf, but I don't know, it's weird. It's just weird.
Those are angry buggers too. The good old Dogman. Very testy.
Yeah, I never hear good stories about the Dogman, that's for sure.
No, you really don't. They are far less apt to just walk away from something than a Bigfoot. They'll just kind of get right up in your face more often than not. Yeah,
they're very aggressive from what I've heard, and they'll come after you.
Is there any tales out of the Hockomock about Dogman sightings?
No, surprise. Well, there's been tales of what they call the hounds of hell, devil dogs, which makes me kind of wonder if they were referring to like a dog man, but the descriptions have been like hyena-like creatures, but I've never come across anything that walked on two legs. When, I was reading these articles, it was just that these were, large wolf-like creatures and different than a regular wolf, but it was pretty fascinating.
So when is your first official excursion out there with the team?
I'm hoping, actually things have gotten really warm down here. It's actually 60 degrees here today. So I was shooting for like the beginning of April, but who knows, it might be the end of March that we're heading out there. I've been talking with 3 different guys, and we're just trying to coordinate everything so we can get up there.
I'll look forward to hearing about that. If you guys come across anything, you're welcome back on any time to share it. And of course, once a new book comes out.
Well, that would be great. I would really appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right, guys, again, the book is Strange Days in the Hockomock Swamp, and the author's name is Kevin Foster. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on with me today.
It's been a pleasure, Shannon. It was great to be on. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. First there is summer, and then there is spring. he says, when you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. The master will say to somebody, "Now get up and walk across the room." And he comes back and he says, "Where are your footprints?" They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.